Live with the Bucks in search of that answer. And then they are the only unbeaten left standing. So why do the numbers suggest the Steelers aren't what you think they are? Answers to those and other questions as we get up with you, starting right now. Greeny with you from Bristol, Connecticut this morning. Dan Graziano is here. My regular football crew is together. And listen, the news of the day across this country is extraordinary. It is dramatic. It is important. We assume that if you've tuned on ESPN this morning, it is because you are looking for a respite from that. Our job is to bring you the sports for the next 2 hours and hopefully put a smile on your face along the way. That is what we're going to do starting right now. And we begin with the deal that did not get done. If the Packers are going to make a run to the Super Bowl, it is going to be up to the players on their roster. Green Bay stood pat at the trade deadline despite a lack of production at the wide receiver position once you get beyond Davante Adams. And take a look at these numbers. Adams has more than doubled the production of every other receiver on the roster over the last 2 years. Allen Lazard is second in each of these major categories, but he's missed the team's last 4 games while on injured reserve. And so let me bring the conversation here first to Mr. Graziano, our insider extraordinaire. Why didn't the Packers get anything done yesterday?
Fundamentally, they believe they have a good enough team to contend for the Super Bowl as they already did in the offseason. And this is the Packers. The way they operate their organization, it is draft and develop. If you're going to trade significant draft picks for a player in season, it's not going to be a player that only has 2 months left on his contract. For example, we talked about Will Fuller, the Texans wide receiver, as a potential option. Green Bay just never got to the point where the price was appealing and made them feel like it was worth it in terms of sacrificing their big picture view for the short term.
And so the specific names that we came up with involved a bunch of receivers, particularly Texans receivers like Will Fuller, for example. Do we know what it is the Texans were looking for Will Fuller?
Specifically, no, but we know the Texans weren't going to give him away. They like him, and they understand that Deshaun Watson likes him and needs receivers to throw to. They already took DeAndre Hopkins away from him. So if he leaves, if Will Fuller leaves at the end of the season as a free agent, Texans probably end up recouping a third-round compensatory draft pick as a result. So it makes sense to think that you would have to give them more than a third-round pick to get the guy, and a second-round pick for the Packers is a big deal. Davante Adams was a second-round pick. They really believe in the value of those picks as the foundation of their team and their perennial success.
All right, so that is where the Green Bay Packers and their legendary quarterback stand as of this morning. Let me bring my football crew in for this morning, and there they are. Dominique Foxworth, David Pollack, and the big fella D. Wood are all ready to go today. And Neek, let me start with you. In your opinion, I'll put it as simply as I can. Do you believe the Packers blew it not making a deal for Will Fuller yesterday?
No, I don't think that they blew it not making a deal. I think their offense certainly could be better, but their offense hasn't been the huge problem so far this year. The problem was on the defensive side of the ball, and the issues that they have on defense won't be solved by trading for one player. There's only few players out there that can make a big enough difference on the defense, and I don't think the teams are trying to trade players like that. So I think the Packers were stuck in this situation. I know draft and develop is normally their philosophy. They've gone into free agency aggressively the last couple of years, but I don't think selling the farm to try to make a run right now is the move that they should have made. So given what was on the table, I'm satisfied with the Packers did nothing yesterday.
That's one vote for satisfied with nothing. Damien Woody, what do you vote for?
Well, I would have liked to have seen them make a move, but I just, the question is who was it going to be? You're talking about Will Fuller. Will Fuller's a guy that, can obviously stretch the field, but he's also an injury-prone guy. And if you're a team like the Green Bay Packers that draft and develop, why would you give up, an asset, for a guy that you might not, you really can't depend on because of his injury history? So I would have liked to see another piece for Aaron Rodgers to make a good push, but I don't think there's really anyone out there for the Green Bay Packers to go out there and get.
All right, so I can't get anyone to agree with me. David Pollack, let me ask you this question. As they are currently constructed, do you believe the Green Bay Packers are a Super Bowl team this season?
No. And by the way, I just got annoyed big time with Neek and Woody because they said draft and develop. Who the heck did they draft? Jordan Love and A.J. Dillon. Like, the defense sucked a year ago. We knew this, right? Like, we knew this coming into the season. So when you spend your first 2 picks, which is your most important players that are going to come in and make an immediate impact. Mostert, by the way, last year, rushed, had over 200 yards from scrimmage, destroyed you. Hey, I might need to stop the run. That might be a great idea. By the way, we knew they needed help with Davante Adams. T. Higgins would look great, wouldn't they? So, I mean, the Packers lost this on the draft night, by the way. This is something that's going to continue to be a problem. Their defense isn't going to get better. By the way, it's missed tackle after missed tackle after missed tackle. So they could have brought somebody in. It's not going to help him right now.
I knew I liked this David Pollack. He's 100% right in everything he just said. Dominique Foxworth, we're talking about drafting and developing as though winning a championship in one individual year is not the goal. Rather, it is just being really good for a long period of time, which seems to be what they've done in Green Bay. They've had back-to-back first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks for the last 30 years, and in that time, they've won 2 championships. I think that's an underachievement.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism over the last decade or so of Packers football, but I don't think that necessarily speaks to the moment right now. They decided that last year their team was not good enough to win the Super Bowl, and they decided that they were not 1 or 2 pieces away. So they started building for the future, and it seems like they are sticking to that plan. It will be somewhat silly, I think, right now to jump off of that plan and go trade all your assets if you're trying to build to having a great team in the future, and trade all your assets to make a run right now when you don't believe that your team is complete and you don't think that Aaron Rodgers is necessarily good enough to put this team on his back. And if he is, he'll do that. And trading for another receiver isn't going to change that necessarily. And I would love to sign some sort of player that comes on and takes this defense from bottom of the league to middle of the league. But that player ain't out there. Nobody's trading Aaron Donald. That's just not a thing that's going to happen.
Wait a minute. First of all, why is Graziano nodding like crazy at all of this?
I think they do believe they're good enough, and that's the point, right? That if you could have told the Packers front office yesterday, adding player X, let's say Will Fuller or somebody on defense, would guarantee you that you go from being a Super Bowl contender to a Super Bowl champion, they probably would have done it. But to your point, Dominique, that player's not out there, and they recognize that. So it's about, we have a good team. We're 19-6 over the last couple of years. We believe we have as good a chance as anybody with what we have. So going outside of our plan to do something different isn't necessarily where we want to be as an organization. So I think it's a little bit different from what Dominique is saying, in that they do believe they have a good enough team and that they didn't need to give up assets in order to make small improvement.
I mean, that's where we disagree. Is if they felt like they were close enough to win a championship, that's where I think drafting a running back and a quarterback early in the draft last year, that seems like a team that does not believe that they are a step away, or they just believe that Love is just that special Mahomes level talent that you can't pass up. To me, that suggests to me that they were not ready to make this leap.
It's a team that didn't believe that step was available to them in the draft.
Right.
They didn't have a player that go, oh, if we draft this guy, we can win next year's Super Bowl. That equation didn't add up for them.
Go ahead, D-Wood.
Well, listen, who is running away with the NFC? There's not a team running away with the NFC. I mean, we can all talk about the Seattle Seahawks look good. They stink on defense. You know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yeah, we like what they do on defense, but they're still trying to find their way offensively. There's not one team in the NFC right now that's running away with this. So if you're the Green Bay Packers, you're sitting back saying, looking at the landscape, yeah, we got a shot. We got a shot at this. It's not like we're some scrubs with 5-2.
But you know what the big teams in the NFC did? Tampa, they added a piece. Seattle, they added a piece. These teams all went out and made moves, and the Green Bay Packers did nothing. Pollack, go ahead.
Well, the Vikings dang sure aren't on that list, are they? And they just curb stomped you. So, I mean, I don't think this is also a team that I'm looking at that I'm going, man, yeah, they're going to be one of those. Offensively, yeah, they got some nice pieces, but I'm going to stop Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers isn't going to continue to play out of his mind like he did to start the season the rest of the year. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Woody, but the Vikings aren't on that list, and it was a bloodbath. I mean, it was just unbelievable, just pounding it right at you over and over again. That's not a team. And the last time we saw the Packers last year, it was in the NFC Championship game, and it looked very similar to that. It was just straight down your throat. You couldn't stop it. So I think there's a lot of teams that can do that to the Packers.
That's exactly right. But the point is,
but it was the NFC Championship game.
That's the point.
I mean, they were in the game.
I feel like you're saying the same thing I am, but you're acting like I'm disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that they were this close. There were 4 teams left that could win the championship last year. So why are you planning for a future after Aaron Rodgers when you're that close to winning a championship with him? No one is ever going to convince me that I don't have this one right. Meanwhile, the conversation only begins there. Let's talk about a team that is adding pieces and trying to win. This is a team that just brought in the big receiver. Big day in Tampa today. Antonio Brown practicing for the first time as a member of the Buccaneers. He'll be eligible to play Sunday night against the Saints.